to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I am joined by my good sis Court, aka None of My Friends Watch Anime. We are reviewing, recapping, rehashing, spilling the tea on episode 2 of Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. In this episode, Queen Charlotte continues her reign of solitude during her alleged honeymoon, and King George remains a mystery to her. Meanwhile, the pressure to reproduce an heir is on. Hijinks ensue. We're going to get into it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, join our Patreon, and come back to join us for episode 3. See you guys soon. Bye.
Yeah. So we roll over to episode 2. Charlotte is in solitude and her husband remains a mystery to her, and the pressure to produce an heir is immediate. Okay.
They said she had thick hips, so you gonna produce me lots of babies. I said, oof, can you imagine? Oof.
Here's what, indeed.
Right. A clan baby. Holla at me.
Okay, so could you stand to be tended to this much?
Okay. So perhaps it just depends on what we're talking about, because I did make a note here that I thought it was interesting that they had white women doing natural hair. And like how you know how you used to use like end papers when you would do your rollers, like they had those too. And I was like, shout out to Shonda, yo. Like, and I thought that was interesting that they had white women actually doing her hair. And it's like,
there's something to that fact of, like Catelyn Stark said, whatever we say is right is what's right. And so if we say that this is the standard, that this is not exotic, that this is not different, everybody else got to catch up. It's like that one time, when Beyonce performed at the Super Bowl and she kind of like stumbled a bit, and somebody was like, no, Beyonce didn't fall. The ground was stepping up to catch her.
Right.
It's like
we gotta fall in line.
Yeah, right. Like everybody else has to fall in line. And I have that in my notes as well. I love so much that her hair is wrapped at night. And I also really appreciate that as she comes into herself and into her power more, her hair gets bigger.
Huge.
Love.
Huge. I love it so much.
I just felt it felt so fucking wasteful, Court, that we're changing outfits several times.
Three times.
But babe, just to be
in the hours. Yeah, like within the hours.
Just to be in the house. And don't get me wrong. You know, I love to dress
a full coat to just get groomed. A full coat cape to just get groomed. Sister. That's why I said, I don't know. I kind of feel like I might like it a little bit. I don't know.
Sure, because you know, I'm a step away from being a drag queen. I love pageantry, but I also like my space. Like, I'm a single woman who's been living by herself for a long time, and so for me, the idea of not being able to ever take a step, to not pick my own orange, to whatever, that would drive me up the wall. And it also,
that's true.
Like, the food in period pieces always looks so good to me, but the knowledge that so much of that wasn't eaten, and I'm like, in real
and the poor people were starving.
Did the staff get to at least eat it? You know what I mean? What should I do with all this food afterwards?
Waste it. Wasted it.
So the council of thin-lipped men.
Oh, now, Lord, what's his name? The one that was dressing his ass off.
Oh,
he was dressing his ass off. Terrible person. He was the villain of the story, but he was wearing. I loved his outfits every single time he came on screen, and he was always wearing cream, which I thought was interesting. Because again, I feel like he's the villain of the story, but he was always wearing like some sort of like ivory, floral, like embroidered thing. Like, he was never wearing dark clothing.
Because here's what, from his vantage point, he is a patriot.
Mm-hmm.
He is
he is the leader. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
right.
the liaison between the crown and parliament.
Parliament.
And y'all need to get this shit again
in order.
It's duty versus compassion, like towards these people. I have in my notes here as well that Lord Bute is a see you next Tuesday.
He's awful, an awful person,
and
awful person.
I love that when Charlotte finally gets fed up and goes to Q to see George, and she discovers that he's just been in an observatory, and it's like,
with science. She said, "You'd rather spend your time here instead of with me, instead of with all this."
And it's the fact that he doesn't understand, because he's like, "Well, you're a queen," and he's like, and she's like, "Yeah, queens aren't kings. I don't get to do
what anything you get to do."
You know what I mean? She woke up the next day just like, "Well, you know what? Let me make the best of the situation, and like let's hit these streets. Like, I want to see museums. Like, let's get out." You know, and it's like, "Girl, you can't go nowhere."
And they was like, you on your honeymoon, because technically they should have been together making babies. Like that is what the honeymoon phase is supposed to be, is that they were making children. And they wasn't. And they wasn't
supposed to be made. Babies is supposed to be made. This is also the trip to Q is where Brimsley and Reynolds.
I loved them so much.
And then
like love story within a love story. Like I thought that was great.
My favorite thing.
Yeah.
A Reynolds bump it.
Killed me, because I feel like whenever he took it down, I loved, like he's, first of all, his skin is amazing. But like, I was like, okay, but he's so cute without that bump.
He had a full-on bump it. He was giving sure.
But you had to. I mean, I guess you had to with the time. Otherwise, he would have had to wear those, like, like those little, like, whatever Lord Bute had.
Yeah.
Like the little tights. Because a few of them have that.
Yeah. I loved his bump it, and I loved that they both kind of clocked each other's tea, and it was just like, well, while they figure this out, what do you want to go?
What do you want to do?
So what
so do you think that they were already rocking with each other prior to, because they were really familiar when he was like, would you like a break? Or because how would you have known that the other one was, you know what I mean?
That was my question as well. And I have come across some historical content or whatever that is something I want to dig into more, of how queer people signal to other queer people that they were like down a clown. And I was curious about that as well. Had they crossed paths before? I was curious about that as well. Meanwhile, Lady Danbury is going through it because her husband is going through it. This man wants to have sex when he's happy, when he's disappointed, when he says she cannot escape this man.
And I thought it was so interesting that he could even do that.
Well, he couldn't. We'll get there. The fact that it's still so true now, that even when we have the same things as them, we still don't have the same social capital, the same access. And he continued to feel like he wasn't good enough, like as a man, even though his father was a king, right? You know how the Hoteps, we was descended from kings, girl, whatever, not all of he really was descended from a king, but still didn't get to, they were awarded these titles, all the people of color, in order to make this experiment legitimate. It was, okay, we need to add to her court, so let's give these titles. And I so love that Lady Danbury is a type of woman who just knows how to get shit done.
100.
And we observe her throughout the entire series doing so much social and emotional labor in order to hold him up, and she never gets the credit for it.
Yeah. And he even did that. Yes, they do love me. And it's like, honey, you're here because of me. Literally, legitimately. You're in the room because I'm here. I put you here. I actually put you in this room. And so I thought that was interesting too. And I thought that hold on, what did I say? Girl, I can't even read half my stuff half the time. But I did like that she when they had that moment where she was like, you forget why your father knew my father-in-law, why your father-in-law knew my father-in-law. And it was just like, we have enough money. Like, you know, that's not the problem. I need to be able to go to the best atelier. Like, I need to be able to, like, my husband needs to be able to have seats at the white, which I thought was funny. The whites, like, okay.
Right.
I thought that was like, look at her not wanting to be married to this man, but still realizing, because I also think that she was doing dutiful things, but also think that she cared for him.
When she rolled over and caressed that face, you know what I mean? Reassuring him again, the emotional
face only a mother could love.
You know, the emotional labor of upholding a man who doesn't feel validated in the world. And where does that go? Even present day, right? Where does it go when men don't feel validated? They go and they express dominance in the only other place that they can, in the home,
in their home,
over wife and kids. 100. And that still happens now. How are 100. We still not removed from this now? But I absolutely love that, you know, she goes for tea time with Charlotte, and they have this version of a friendship forming, right? And so, of course, Catelyn Stark is like, well, let me use this to my advantage. And she's like, well, bitch, let me use it to mine.
And still did, but didn't. Like, she never gave up Charlotte's tea, right? Like, never told what was actually going on, and still leveraged it in a way that got her to where she needed to be. I mean, a bad bitch.
Mama knows how to play the game. Right. And I have to be honest, I'm always a little bit envious of people who can do that, who can manipulate situations in that way. I think that that's just like a really cool skill to have.
100.
This is where she tells her what it means to consummate the marriage, right? Like, yes, with the drawing.
I think this is the episode where she, yes, okay, that's why I said the drawings killed me. Like, I thought that was hilarious. Actually, like, pretty good drawing.
Talk about it. But it's also the way when we were coming up, right? The way we're introduced to sex is so different. She, like, Lady Danbury had such a specific experience with sex that Charlotte didn't really have. Charlotte had a much better, you know, and even in discussing it, I guess Charlotte was like, let me not be a Shantae's got a man ass bitch and tell her how I'm enjoying being laid down, spread out wide. But so George, so George finally shows up for a dinner. He is expecting gratitude, and Charlotte is not happy at all.
She said, a meal?
A meal.
She looked and was like, a meal?
So I love to observe vulnerability. He takes her back to the observatory. He's like, look, this is what I'm into. Like, share in this with me. And he explains that, like, being raised as a king is very isolating. The world revolves around you and it makes you selfish. And I don't want to be selfish with you. And that emotional vulnerability leads to the physical intimacy, which leads to our favorite line of the episode. I'm very good with buttons.
When he said that, I said, hey, listen, George, boy, don't play with me. But I also thought that the setup just seemed like so much pressure, though. Because, like, you know, she had to get dressed. She had to get changed. Obviously, she's doted on to get changed to go to his bed chambers. And then they've got people outside waiting for them to be done having sex. Like,
this is what I mean.
The pressure of it all, I would feel like so... But like, how could you even get it together?
Princess Augusta says that this is even more of a modernized version than when she was coming up, because they had people in their room.
In the room. How could you perform? I don't know how I would be able to perform.
The voyeurism.
Or I would have to be like, okay, where's the wine and the mutton? Because, like, I'm going to have to, like, get,
no, look, you know. Think of the time. Just bring me straight opium.
You know what I mean? I'm going to need something to, like, morphine? I don't know. I'm going to need something to, like, get me not thinking of anything else, because my mind would be constantly on them. Like, I don't know. But then I loved when, you know, when he told her you know, like he was coming back to the crib, like when he was coming back to
Oh, I love
live
that
at the.
boundary. I love that she verbalized that, but does this mean that you're
Mhm.
coming home to, but
Yeah, Buckingham House. And he said, I am. And she just got like a little excited and was like, all right, fine. And then turned around and left. All right, let's go, you know?
I really love that I getting your needs met, being vocal
Mm-hmm.
and clear about what does this mean? How many
Mm-hmm.
times in our lives have we just like gone along to get along and then suffered the consequences of not verbalizing what we really wanted? So the
Yep.
next morning, she wakes up in an empty bed and she's expecting like marital bliss and we're going to have breakfast
Mm-hmm.
together. And she overhears this conversation that he's
Yeah.
having with his mom and she realizes how transactional their
The whole thing
relationship
is.
actually is. It's not the romance or the intimacy that she thought it was, or so
Mm-hmm.
she thinks. There's so many layers to this, right? Like her perception, his perception, whatever. And this creates a fracture in
Mm-hmm.
their marriage, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
we as the audience see him break down and have what we think
Yeah.
is a panic attack, right? And Reynolds snaps into action. And there's something, I know that it's a romanticized version of servitude, but there is something really beautiful about the devotion that Reynolds has to him and that Brimsley has to her. There's something really sweet and beautiful about that for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I put here like I think Brimsley genuinely cares for her
yeah.
off rip, right? Like even though he knows I think he's concerned for her. One, because she's 17, right? Like she's in a foreign land, she's Black, right? I feel like there's like a lot of different um nuances to why he could care for her, but like you start to see their devotions to each of them, like even when I don't remember which episode it was, but like even when Reynolds says something about like he's mine, like I'll take care of him, right? Like they're so territorial of each of them. And like even Brimsley says it later, like he says something like, well, you handle your king, I'll handle my queen, right? Like because
I
they're
love
also a couple, right? So they're like fighting over respective kids essentially, like, you know,
it.
I'll take care of this one, you take care of that one. And I liked that dynamic too with the two of
It
them.
kind of reminds me of like how I am about my brothers. I am
Mm-hmm.
so, especially like my chosen brothers, I am so territorial over them
Yeah.
where I'm just like, who is this?
Who's this
Who are
bitch?
these niggas? You
I
know,
tell people all the time, if my brother called me right now and said, pull up on my way. What's
look,
going on? What happened?
close this
What
laptop.
happened? Right. What's going on? And I say like my mom teases me all the time because she's like, whatever your baby wants, your baby gets, right? Because it's like you know, I'm like that with my brother too. And even though he's older than me, it's like, no, this is my sibling. This is somebody I care about. Yeah.
Yeah.